This is my shortened story, testimony of how I got here and where I am today. I came to Open Door Mission in October of 2021. And how I got here was different than most of the clients we see at the mission. My addiction did not come from any trauma that was a result of anything that happened in my past. My addiction came from a physical problem. In my background, I had started working in emergency medical services back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And I suffered my first back injury in the early 1990s. And that started a pattern of physical injuries in that industry I was working in. Fast forward to 1999, I moved down here to Texas and was working in some other industries and returned to working in emergency medical services. And then I started working for the city of Houston in 2007 as their emergency medical services investigator. And my old injuries had really started to take a toll at this point. And I go to the doctor like normal people do, and the doctor starts me on pain medication, promising it's safe and all the things that go with that. And being in my background, in the back of my head, I knew better, but the medicine made me feel better, made me function better. So that was the beginning. As I took the medicine and started to feel better, I needed more and more. And this started in probably 2008, and I just needed more and more medication to get the desired effect, as anybody who has an opiate addiction knows. And that continued for years, and I became what they call a functional addict. I felt like I needed the drugs to be normal, to feel normal. And when I got to the point where the doctors couldn't supply enough medication for me to get the desired effect, I started looking to purchase it from other people or purchase it off the street. And I got to the point where the doctors said that, well, the pills weren't working anymore, so we're going to put you on this thing called a fentanyl patch. And this was before the whole outbreak of fentanyl that we're dealing with now. And I believed, oh, it's got to be better than abusing the pills I've been abusing. But I quickly found a way to abuse the patches as well. And again, this made me feel like I was functioning normal, that it was no big deal. And so this continued until I left the city in 2017. And I continued to find ways to get my drugs, mostly from a doctor, but then some off the street or from friends who are dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. And about this time is when the crackdown came down on the pill mills that they ran in Texas. And so that made the prices of street drugs or street purchased prescription drugs unreachable. It just became so expensive. At this time, I was driving Uber part time and started working for Hilton. And my habit continued to spiral out of control. Eventually, I became a general manager for Hilton, and they asked me if I wanted to live in the hotel that I was managing. But let me backtrack a little bit. I was also married at the time with a wonderful family and a wonderful life as I thought it was, but it wasn't wonderful for them. I put my addiction before anything else in my life, and it cost me my family. It cost me everything. Um, I was not around as a husband, as a father. I was just a functional addict, or what I call a functional addict. And it eventually cost me that family and that marriage. But being so deep in my addiction, I just went on doing what I needed to do to support my addiction because that's what I was married to at the time. So, getting back to Hilton, they asked me if I wanted to live in the hotel, and I said, sure, why not? And that turned into not needing anything for my money except for drugs. And at this point, my drug dealer would deliver to the hotel. And I had graduated from patches and pills to street drugs. And the way this happened was someone just asked me at random one day in an Uber drive, do I want to try heroin? And I said, sure, why not? It was cheaper than what I was doing. And fast forward a few years later, and I'm exactly who I said I would never would be. And that's an IV drug user. And I was shooting up heroin every 4 hours or so, even at work, taking breaks in the bathroom to shoot up and then return to work. And I convinced myself that I had to do this to remain normal, to remain functioning. I couldn't afford to be sick because the withdrawals were so unbearable. I could never make it more than 8 hours without having to use. And pretty soon I had graduated from heroin to injecting pure fentanyl. And that was my life. Working fentanyl, working fentanyl. And then COVID hit. And sorry, we're laying everybody off. You can't live in the hotel. That's it. The free ride's over. So I got my own apartment and was working Uber 12, 13, 14 hours a day, at least, sometimes more, 7 days a week to support my habit. Every day it was wake up at 4 a.m., go do Uber, make enough money by 11 o'clock when my drug dealer answers the phone, get my first hit, continue Ubering, get my night hit, go home, get high, repeat every day. I lived in that apartment for an entire year and never had more than a blow-up mattress. That's all I needed. I never even used the kitchen in 1 year because I didn't need an apartment. I didn't need furniture. I didn't need anything. I just need somewhere to sleep and get high and recharge for the next day. It was a miserable life. And I don't wish those years of misery on anybody. It's a I know there are people out there who go through much worse, but I said I would never be one of those people until I was. So it is now October of 21, and I had tried to quit numerous times. I had prayed to God to save me from my addiction and felt like there was no answer, and He wasn't answering me, and He didn't care. And I felt like my only way out was to kill myself. And so I had everything planned out. I had my suicide notes written. I was ready. And it was October 12th of 2021. And just before I was ready to do it, something came over me and told me to go get help. And that was hard for me because I hid my addiction from everybody and I didn't ever ask for help and I didn't go and seek help ever. Never do a hospital, rehab, nothing. Uh, I had got to the point where I felt like suicide was the only way out. But that day I went to the hospital and I told the hospital my situation, that I was using 2.5 grams of pure fentanyl every 2 days. And I can't make it through withdrawals and I need help. And they said they could help treat the individual symptoms, but they couldn't give me any Suboxone or anything else that would actually keep the withdrawals away. So I sat in that bed in the ER and I cried and I cried and I cried out to God to please help me get through these withdrawals. 8 hours is the longest I had ever made it before. And I just cried out to God to save me from these withdrawals. And in that instant, I had a supernatural experience where I was freed of my addiction instantly by the grace of God. I never suffered a withdrawal symptom. I never have had cravings for it. I've never desired it. I've never even thought about it since. And it's there's no words to explain when that happens. And it was just God finally had to had said, my son, you've had enough, and now I'm going to step in. And He saved my life. And that was when my whole life changed that day. Because of the suicide issue, I was sent to a psychiatric hospital. And I was only there for a day until I had to go back into the hospital for a GI tract issue that had been masked by the opiates for so many years. It wasn't a withdrawal symptom, it was more of a really it was just a GI problem where I wasn't able to keep food or water in me now that I'm not clogged up from the opiates. So I spent nearly a month in the hospital trying to get that issue under control, but not suffering any of the other misery that comes with opiate withdrawals, the shakes, the muscle aches, the mental anguish, the cravings, the depression. I had nothing, just this GI problem. And eventually got it under control, and I said, I'm still not ready to be out there on my own. I need to learn some coping skills. And so they gave me a list of the rehabs in Houston, and I opened up the book, and the first thing I saw on the page was Open Door Mission Faith-Based Rehab. So I called over to the mission, and 2 days later, I walked through that front gate. And I had never been to a rehab before, didn't know what to expect. And it was just love and acceptance and friendship and brotherhood from day one. I walked through that gate. And it was the best thing in my life ever that I had experienced, to be in this place and to be safe and to learn about my addiction. And even though I was freed of my addiction, I still needed to learn about it so I could talk to people about it and be open about my addiction, since I had hid it for so many years. And the programs helped me change the way I looked at things, the anger in my life, all those things. And once I was here, I sent messages and emails to people to let them know where I was and that I was okay. And one of the emails I sent was to my ex-wife to let her know what was going on. And she said to me that she had a new life she was happy in, and that she didn't want to hear from me again. And I get that after what I had put her through. So I continued in the program. 6 months later, graduated the program. And that was a wonderful day. It was a beautiful day. And I was so happy for once in 15 years, truly happy and free of an addiction. 15 years. And I reached out to my ex-wife on the Mother's Day after my graduation, just to say, I know you don't want to hear from me, but just want to say Happy Mother's Day. And I'll never forget the text I got back that said, I watched your graduation speech on Facebook and I'm proud of you. Period. And we've had a friendship ever since. She's happy in her life, I'm happy in my life, and that relationship has been restored to what God says it should be restored to, and that's wonderful. And so after graduation, they offered me the position of education manager, and I prayed on it, and I felt like that's what I should be doing and where I should be. Shortly after that, I took on other positions at the mission, career guidance, transition manager, intake, all different positions, until where I am now as the director of technology. And this place has been life-changing, and it can be life-changing for anybody who really wants the change in their life. And I'm living proof of it, and there are plenty of people here who are graduates of the program that are living fulfilling, successful lives. And the thing I always say is, this place changed my life, but God saved it. And Jesus has saved my life. Jesus is my life. And I try to do everything I can for him these days. Not for the drugs, not for my addiction, not for anything of this world. And yes, I fail every day, but I keep trying, and that's all God wants from us. So I hope this video gives you hope for somebody who may be watching this, and to know that there is hope out there, that you don't have to give up. My name is Christopher Hoff, and I am Open Door Mission.